Hey guys, tonight we journey to a single place, one continent, not Europe or Asia or the Americas. Tonight we go to Africa, the only place where humans could have possibly begun. You stand on ancient soil 7 million years ago and you need to understand something. This isn't an accident. This isn't random chance. There's a reason you're here and nowhere else. And before we dig into why, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight and what time is it there? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes in the Great Rift Valley. The air shimmers with heat. Acacia trees dot the horizon like scattered thoughts. The ground beneath your feet is cracking, literally tearing itself apart over millions of years. This geological wound will become the cradle of humanity. But why here? Why not the forests of Southeast Asia or the plains of South America? The answer begins with the Earth itself. Africa wasn't chosen by design. It was shaped by circumstance, by climate, by a series of catastrophic changes that made this continent the only viable laboratory for human evolution. You're standing in the middle of the greatest experiment life ever conducted. And you're the result. The first thing you need to understand is that Africa is old. Not just ancient, but foundationally old. When other continents were still figuring out their shapes, Africa had already settled into something stable. The bedrock here is among the oldest on the planet. Some rocks date back over 3 billion years. That stability mattered because evolution needs time. It needs consistency. It needs a stage that doesn't keep collapsing. While other land masses drifted and collided and reshaped themselves through tectonic violence, Africa remained relatively stable. Not unchanging, nothing ever is, but stable enough that life could establish deep roots. Around 20 million years ago, something shifts. The climate begins to change. Not dramatically at first, just a slow cooling trend that reshapes everything. The dense forests that once covered much of East Africa start to retreat. Trees thin out, grasslands expand. And in that transition, in that awkward middle ground between forest and savanna, something important happens. Pressure builds. Your ancestors, the early apes, face a choice. Stay in the shrinking forests and compete for dwindling resources, or adapt to the new landscape. Most stay. They become the ancestors of modern chimpanzees and gorillas, masters of the trees, comfortable in the canopy. But a few venture out. They step into the open, and that step changes everything. The Rift Valley becomes your classroom. This massive crack in the Earth's surface creates a unique environment. To the west, forests. To the east, grasslands. The valley itself is a barrier and a bridge. It isolates populations, forcing them to adapt separately. It creates microclimates, pockets of different conditions within walking distance of each other. This diversity becomes crucial. You don't evolve in comfort, you evolve under pressure with just enough resources to survive, but not enough to relax. The valley floor is hot, exposed, dangerous, but it's also rich with opportunity. Lakes form and dry up, rivers cut new channels. Volcanic soil creates fertile patches. The landscape is constantly teaching, constantly testing. Walking upright happens here, not because it's elegant or because your ancestors had grand visions of the future. It happens because the tall grass demands it. You need to see over the vegetation. You need to spot predators before they spot you. You need to carry things, tools, food, infants, across longer distances. 4 legs are great for sprinting. 2 legs are better for endurance and efficiency. The shift isn't sudden. It happens over millions of years. Incremental changes, hips rotate, spines curve, feet arch. The big toe aligns with the others instead of splaying out for gripping branches. Each small modification improves bipedal efficiency just slightly, and slightly is enough when you're competing for survival. The temperature keeps dropping. Ice ages grip the northern hemisphere. Africa doesn't freeze, but it dries out. Forests shrink further, lakes evaporate, rivers change course. Every few thousand years the climate swings. Wet periods bring abundance, dry periods bring death. Your ancestors learn to adapt, or they vanish. This climate instability becomes a selection pressure unlike anything else on the planet. When resources are abundant, populations grow. When droughts hit, only the smartest, most adaptable, most cooperative groups survive. This cycling creates a ratchet effect. Each crisis eliminates the less capable. Each recovery allows innovation to spread. Over time, the baseline capabilities increase. Other continents experience climate change too, but Africa has something unique. It straddles the equator. It maintains warmth even during ice ages. It never becomes too cold for primates to survive, yet it becomes dry enough, challenging enough to force innovation. You're not dealing with glaciers that wipe out everything. You're dealing with droughts that test everything. The difference matters. Total devastation resets evolution. Everyone dies and the experiment ends. Partial devastation creates selection pressure. Some die, the fittest survive, and the population rebounds stronger. Around 6 to 7 million years ago, the split happens. Your lineage diverges from the ancestors of chimpanzees. The genetic evidence is clear. This split occurs in Africa, not Europe, not Asia. The fossil record confirms it. Every early hominin, every proto-human species discovered comes from African soil. Sahelanthropus, found in Chad. Orrorin, found in Kenya. Ardipithecus, found in Ethiopia. They're all African, every single one. No matter where scientists dig, no matter how many expeditions search Asia or Europe for earlier human ancestors, the oldest fossils always come from Africa. The pattern is undeniable. Why not Asia? Asia has forests, grasslands, diverse climates, but Asia lacks the specific combination Africa offers: the Rift Valley, the climate oscillations, the right kind of predators, the right kind of prey. Asia evolves its own primates, orangutans, gibbons, various monkeys, but they remain in the trees or they vanish. They don't have the pressure cooker environment that forces bipedalism and brain growth. The forests of Southeast Asia are rich, stable, productive. And that's the problem. When food is abundant and life is easy, there's no pressure to change. Evolution favors the already successful. Orangutans become better at being orangutans. They don't become something else. Europe is too cold during crucial periods. During ice ages, glaciers cover much of the continent. Any primate population there would need to migrate south repeatedly or die. There's no stability for long-term evolutionary experiments. Primates need warmth. Their infants are vulnerable. Their gestation periods are long. They can't breed fast enough to recover from repeated population crashes. Europe has primates during warm periods. Fossils prove it. But these populations don't persist. They don't evolve into anything more complex. They're evolutionary dead ends, washed away by the next glacial advance. South America is isolated. Primates arrived there much later, around 40 million years ago, probably rafting across a narrower Atlantic on vegetation mats. They evolve in different directions. They become New World monkeys, agile and diverse, but they never face the same pressures that push toward humanity. The forests there are vast and productive. Resources are abundant. Predators exist, but not the same density and variety as Africa. There's no arms race, pushing intelligence to extremes. The monkeys succeed by remaining monkeys. Australia is too isolated and too dry. Its mammals evolve in bizarre directions, marsupials and monotremes, but no primates ever reach it naturally. The oceans are too wide, the journey too impossible for tree-dwelling apes to make. By the time humans finally reach Australia, they do so as fully modern humans with boats and planning. No pre-human species ever has that capability. Australia's evolutionary story is completely separate from the primate story. It's a world where mammals never dominate, where reptiles and birds fill niches that elsewhere belong to placental mammals. Africa becomes the only option not by being perfect, but by being possible. It's warm enough for primates, but challenging enough to drive change. It's stable enough for long-term evolution, but unstable enough to prevent stagnation. It has the right geology, the right climate patterns, the right ecological communities. Everything aligns. Not because of divine intervention or cosmic purpose, but because of probability and time. Given enough continents and enough millions of years, one of them will have the right conditions. Africa is that one. The food situation in Africa matters enormously. The grasslands that replace forests create new opportunities. Large herds of grazing animals appear. Wildebeest, zebras, antelopes. These herds attract predators, lions, hyenas, leopards, and where predators hunt, they leave scraps. Your ancestors become scavengers at first, not hunters, not yet. Just opportunistic feeders who learn to crack bones for marrow after the real predators have finished. This isn't glamorous, but it works. Marrow is rich in calories and fat. It's brain food, literally. The nutrients support the expensive tissue of growing brains. This scavenging lifestyle requires intelligence. You need to read the landscape, know where kills happen, understand predator behavior. Timing is everything. Arrive too early and your lunch. Arrive too late and nothing remains. You need to watch the sky for circling vultures. Listen for the sounds of feeding. Approach cautiously, always watching for the predators who might still be nearby. This cognitive challenge begins shaping your brain, slowly at first, then faster. Each generation, the slightly smarter individuals scavenge slightly more successfully. They feed themselves and their offspring better. Their children survive at higher rates. Intelligence becomes heritable and selected. The tools appear. Simple at first, just rocks struck together to create sharp edges, but these tools change everything. With a sharp flake, you can cut through thick hide, access meat that would otherwise rot in the sun, process food faster, extract nutrients more efficiently. Tool use isn't unique to humans. Chimps use tools, they poke sticks into termite mounds, they crack nuts with stones. Crows use tools, they fashion hooks from twigs. But the sophistication and dependence on tools becomes uniquely human, and it happens in Africa. The oldest stone tools date back 3.3 million years, found in Kenya. The oldest evidence of habitual tool use, of carrying tools from place to place, of creating tools for future use rather than immediate need. All African. Around 3 to 4 million years ago, Australopithecus walks upright regularly. Lucy and her kind roam East Africa. They're still small-brained, barely larger than chimps, but they're committed to the ground. They've left the trees except for sleeping. This commitment matters because it frees up evolution to work on other things. Better hips for walking, more efficient cooling through sweating, hands refined for manipulation, not climbing. The feet lose their grasping ability. The big toe can no longer oppose the other toes. This seems like a loss, but it's a trade. You sacrifice tree climbing for efficient walking, and on the African savanna, walking matters more. The brain starts growing, not suddenly but incrementally, each generation slightly larger than the last. Australopithecus has a brain around 400 to 500 cubic centimeters. Modern humans have brains around 1,350 cubic centimeters. That growth happens over 3 million years. It's not fast by human standards, but it's extraordinarily fast by evolutionary standards. And this growth is expensive. Brains consume enormous energy. About 20% of your calories go to feeding your brain, even though it's only 2% of your body weight. For brain growth to be worth it, the benefits must be enormous. And in Africa's changing climate, they are. You need to remember where water sources are during dry seasons. Some waterholes dry up completely, others shrink but persist. Knowing which is which can mean life or death. You need to track seasonal patterns. Certain fruits ripen at certain times. Migrating herds pass through predictable corridors. Knowing these patterns allows you to be in the right place at the right time. You need to communicate complex information, not just danger or food, but there's a leopard kill 3 valleys over and the lions haven't found it yet. That level of detail requires sophisticated communication. You need to plan ahead. During the wet season, prepare for the dry season. Cache tools near useful locations. Remember where you left them. Coordinate with your group. Decide who goes where. Who watches the children. Who carries water. All of this requires processing power. And every one of these cognitive skills increases survival rates just enough to be selected for, generation after generation, million after million years. The brain grows because it pays for itself. The calories invested in brain tissue return dividends in acquired calories from better foraging, better scavenging, better planning. Fire comes later, much later than most people think. The first controlled use of fire shows up around 1.5 million years ago, maybe earlier, but the evidence is contested. Distinguishing between natural fire and controlled fire in the archaeological record is difficult. Wildfires happen. Lightning strikes trees. Grass burns. Finding charcoal doesn't prove human control, but eventually the evidence becomes clear. Hearths, fire pits, burned bones in contexts that suggest cooking. Fire changes everything again. Cooked food is easier to digest. It provides more calories with less effort. Raw meat is tough and takes hours to chew and digest. Cooked meat is tender and digests quickly. The same is true for tubers and roots. Cooking kills parasites. Raw meat carries worms, bacteria, protozoa. Eating it is risky. Cooking sterilizes food. It makes a wider variety of foods safe. Some plants are toxic raw but edible cooked. Cooking expands the menu. It also keeps predators away at night. A fire creates a circle of safety. Lions and hyenas are wary of flames. They avoid fire. A group with fire can sleep on the ground instead of climbing trees every night. That might seem minor, but it matters. Sleeping in trees is uncomfortable and dangerous. You can fall. Branches break. Fire allows better rest, which supports better cognition the next day. Fire becomes so important that later humans carry it with them, protecting embers like precious cargo. Creating fire on demand is difficult. Even with the right technique, flint and steel, friction methods, it takes time and effort. Maintaining an existing fire is easier, so groups carry embers in containers, feed them with tinder, keep them smouldering for days or weeks. Losing your fire is a disaster. You might go without until you find another group to borrow from or stumble upon a natural fire. Fire becomes cultural, something passed down and maintained communally. But fire also requires intelligence. You need to understand it. It burns, it spreads, it needs fuel, it produces smoke. You need to control it, feed it, but not too much. Tend it, but don't smother it. Transport it carefully. These skills aren't instinctive, they're learned, taught from parent to child, generation after generation. Fire becomes another selection pressure, favoring intelligence and cultural learning. Early humans might go weeks without fire, then find it after a lightning strike and guard it desperately. Learning to create fire on demand comes even later. But once mastered, it becomes another defining human trait. And again, this happens in Africa first. The Rift Valley keeps tearing open. Volcanoes erupt periodically. Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Kenya, the Virunga volcanic chain. These eruptions shape the landscape. Lava flows create barriers. Ash falls blanket regions. Lake levels rise and fall. This geological activity creates something important. It preserves fossils. Volcanic ash buries remains quickly. The ash contains minerals that help fossilization. Sediments build up in lake beds. When scientists dig into these layers millions of years later, they find your ancestors. The fossil record of human evolution is richest in East Africa, not because evolution only happened there, but because the conditions for preservation are ideal. Fossils form rarely. Most dead organisms decay completely. Bacteria, insects, and scavengers consume everything. Bones scatter and disintegrate. Only under specific conditions do remains fossilize. They need to be buried quickly, protected from scavengers and weathering. Minerals need to replace organic material. This happens in lakes, rivers, volcanic ash. The Rift Valley has all of these. So when scientists search for human ancestors, they search East Africa and they find fossils. Lots of fossils, different species, different time periods, the story of human evolution written in stone. Around 2 million years ago, Homo erectus appears, tall, long-legged, with a brain significantly larger than earlier hominins. Homo erectus is the first human ancestor that looks somewhat modern, the first to have body proportions similar to yours. Long legs for efficient walking and running, shorter arms, a more vertical face, and crucially, the first to leave Africa. But this leaving proves the point. Homo erectus evolves in Africa first, spends hundreds of thousands of years there, then disperses outward. The origin remains African. The species reaches its full development on African soil before expanding. Why does Homo erectus leave? Probably following food. During wet periods, grasslands expand north into the Sahara. What is now desert becomes savanna, rivers flow, lakes form, animals migrate north, and humans follow. The Sahara isn't a permanent barrier. It pulses between desert and grassland on roughly 20,000 year cycles, tied to Earth's orbital variations. During green Sahara periods, migration routes open into the Middle East and beyond. Small groups wander north, then east, then eventually into Asia and Europe. They don't leave because Africa fails them. They leave because they've become so successful that they can. They've mastered fire, tools, cooperative hunting. They're adaptable enough to try new environments. But here's the important part. Those populations that leave Africa stop evolving into humans. Homo erectus in Asia becomes Homo erectus, nothing more. They adapt to local conditions, they develop regional variations, slight differences in skull shape, body size, tool styles. They survive for over 1 million years in some places, but they don't evolve into modern humans. That transformation, that final leap, happens back in Africa, always Africa. The populations outside Africa become evolutionary side branches, successful for a time, but ultimately replaced when later waves of more advanced humans spread out from Africa. Between 300,000 and 200,000 years ago, something remarkable occurs. Homo sapiens emerges. Anatomically modern humans with high foreheads, small faces, prominent chins. The skulls found in Ethiopia and Morocco show this transition. Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, Omo Kibish in Ethiopia. These sites contain the oldest known Homo sapiens fossils. Your species, Homo sapiens, is born in Africa, not Europe, not Asia. The genetic evidence is overwhelming. Every human alive today traces their ancestry back to Africa within the last 300,000 years. Every population, every ethnicity, every person. The genetic trail leads back to Africa. Why doesn't modern humanity evolve elsewhere? The Neanderthals in Europe are intelligent, capable, sophisticated. They use tools, create art, bury their dead. They survive ice ages, they hunt mammoths and woolly rhinos, they make complex tools, they care for their injured and elderly, but they remain Neanderthals. They don't become us. They don't develop the full suite of modern human behaviors. The Denisovans in Asia similarly reach an evolutionary plateau. They're successful in their environments. They adapt to high altitudes in Tibet. They develop genetic advantages for thin air. But they don't transform into something more. Something about Africa keeps pushing evolution forward in ways other regions don't. Perhaps it's the continued climate instability. Africa experiences repeated cycles of wet and dry periods, even as ice ages grip the north. Each swing in climate creates new challenges. Populations shrink and expand. Genetic diversity bottles up, then explodes. During dry periods, populations contract into refugia, small isolated groups. Genetic drift acts strongly. Random mutations can become common. During wet periods, populations expand and reconnect. Genes mix, advantageous mutations spread. This churning creates opportunities for new traits to emerge and spread. The climate acts like a pump, concentrating and dispersing genetic variation. Perhaps it's the disease burden. Africa has more parasites, more pathogens, more ways to get sick than anywhere else. Malaria alone shapes human genetics profoundly. The hemoglobin variants that provide malaria resistance, sickle cell, thalassemia, G6PD deficiency, all evolve in Africa or other malarial regions. These variants have costs. Sickle cell disease is devastating when you inherit 2 copies of the gene, but having 1 copy protects against malaria. In malarial regions, the trade-off is worth it. Enough children survive malaria that the occasional sickle cell disease is acceptable from an evolutionary perspective. Other genetic variations defend against different diseases. Sleeping sickness caused by tsetse flies, yellow fever, dengue, river blindness, guinea worm. The list goes on. Africa is disease central for humans. This constant battle with invisible enemies requires robust immune systems, but it might also require cognitive flexibility, recognizing contaminated water, avoiding areas where disease is prevalent, understanding that certain behaviors increase risk. This cognitive arms race with pathogens might contribute to intelligence. The smart groups who figure out hygiene and disease avoidance survive at higher rates. Perhaps it's the sheer diversity of environments. Within Africa, you have deserts, rainforests, mountains, coasts, savannas, the Sahara in the north, the Congo rainforest in the center, the Ethiopian highlands, the East African savannas, the southern African deserts, the coastal regions. Early humans experience all of these. Not necessarily the same groups, but over time, human populations sample all of Africa's climates. Adaptability becomes paramount. Specialized populations might dominate one environment, but generalists survive changes. And humans become the ultimate generalists, capable of thriving almost anywhere through cultural adaptation rather than biological specialization. The megafauna matters too. Africa retains its large animals throughout human evolution: elephants, rhinos, hippos, big cats. These animals co-evolve with humans. They learn to fear us as we learn to hunt them. This creates an arms race of intelligence. Elephants recognize human language. They flee from human voices. They've learned over hundreds of thousands of years that humans are dangerous. In other continents, when humans arrive, the megafauna has no experience with human hunters. They're naive. They don't run. They're easy targets. They're wiped out quickly within a few thousand years of human arrival. Mammoths, giant sloths, marsupial lions, all gone. But in Africa, the prey is smart, wary, dangerous. Elephants will charge. Hippos are aggressive. Cape buffalo are called the Black Death for a reason. Hunting them requires cooperation, planning, sophisticated weapons. You can't just walk up and club them, you need strategy. Drive animals into ambushes, coordinate attacks, use poison, track wounded animals for days. This selection pressure continues shaping human cognition throughout our evolution. The arms race never stops. As humans get smarter, prey gets warier. As prey gets warier, humans must get smarter still. Language probably evolves in Africa too. The complexity of modern human language requires specific brain structures and genetic changes. The FOXP2 gene, associated with speech and language processing, shows signs of selection in human lineages. This gene isn't unique to humans. Other animals have versions, but the human version has specific mutations that appear to be important for language. While we can't know exactly when language emerges, full grammatical language, the cognitive demands of African environments, coordinating hunts, sharing information about distant water sources, teaching tool making, all favor communication skills. Language is more than just sounds. It's grammar, syntax, the ability to talk about things not present. Past events, future plans, hypothetical situations. This abstraction is uniquely human. Other animals communicate. Birds sing, dolphins click, primates grunt and gesture. But no other species can discuss philosophy or tell jokes or explain why the sky is blue. Language allows cultural transmission at unprecedented scale. You can teach complex skills through explanation rather than just demonstration. You can share knowledge across generations. Old people tell young people about the drought 50 years ago, about the strategies that worked. This collective memory transcends individual lifespans. Social complexity increases. Group sizes grow. Early hominins might live in groups of 20 or 30. By the time you reach Homo sapiens, group sizes reach 100 to 150 individuals. This is Dunbar's number, the theoretical cognitive limit on stable social relationships. You're not just tracking family members now, but remembering relationships between dozens of individuals. Who owes whom a favor? Who can be trusted? Who cheated last time resources were shared? Who has skills you might need? Who has daughters of marriageable age? This social intelligence becomes as important as understanding the natural world, perhaps more important. The most dangerous thing in your environment isn't a lion, it's another human. Humans compete with humans more than with any other species. Around 70,000 years ago, something happens. A population bottleneck. Human numbers crash, possibly down to just a few thousand breeding individuals. The genetic evidence for this is clear. All modern humans show reduced genetic diversity compared to other great apes. Chimpanzees have more genetic diversity in a single forest than exists in all humans globally. This means humans went through a severe bottleneck. Population crashed, most lineages died out, a small group survived, and all modern humans descend from them. The cause is debated, maybe a volcanic eruption, the Toba supervolcano in Indonesia. The eruption was massive. Volcanic winter, crop failures, famine, maybe just a severe drought. Africa goes through devastating dry periods. Lakes dry up completely. Forests shrink to tiny refugia. Most populations die, a few survive in areas with reliable water, coastal regions maybe, deep water sources. These survivors carry reduced genetic diversity. They're the ancestors of everyone alive today, but somehow humanity survives in Africa. That small population carries all of human genetic diversity forward. Every person alive today descends from that bottleneck. We're all cousins, distant cousins, but cousins nonetheless. The most genetically similar large animal population on the planet. Then, around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, humans leave Africa again. This time, it's different. This time, they don't stop. They spread into the Middle East, then Asia, then Australia, then Europe, then eventually the Americas. They carry African genetics with them, African adaptations, African innovation. And wherever they go, they outcompete or absorb the other human species they encounter. Neanderthals interbreed with incoming humans, then vanish. Modern Europeans carry 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Denisovans similarly interbreed, then disappear. Modern Melanesians and indigenous Australians carry Denisovan DNA. Homo erectus, long extinct by then. Only Homo sapiens remains. This final expansion proves something crucial. Humans didn't evolve everywhere independently. There's no parallel evolution of humanity in different regions. It's one origin, one source, Africa. The genetic data confirms this beyond doubt. The further you get from Africa, the less genetic diversity you find. Everyone outside Africa represents just a subset of African genetic variation, a small group that left and multiplied but never contained the full spectrum of human diversity. Indigenous Africans have the most genetic diversity. They're the root population. Everyone else is a branch. The climate patterns in Africa continue to shape us even after we've spread globally. The adaptations forged there, efficient sweating, endurance running, complex problem solving, persist. You carry Africa in your body, in your genes, in the way your brain processes information. You are fundamentally African regardless of where your more recent ancestors lived. Your body evolved for African heat. When Europeans reach northern latitudes, they develop lighter skin for vitamin D synthesis. When Tibetans reach high altitudes, they develop better oxygen processing. But the baseline, the template, is African. Everything else is a modification. The Sahara Desert acts as a pump. During wet periods, it greens and populations expand north. Humans spread across North Africa. During dry periods, it becomes a barrier and populations retreat south or go extinct. This pumping action moves genes, ideas, and people back and forth. It creates contact between groups that might otherwise remain isolated. It maintains gene flow while still allowing some isolation for new traits to emerge. The Sahara isn't a permanent wall. It's a permeable membrane that opens and closes on climatic cycles. This creates the perfect conditions for evolution. Isolation allows differentiation. Connection allows advantageous traits to spread. The coast matters too. The African coastline provides rich resources: shellfish, fish, seabirds, seals. Coastal populations develop sophisticated fishing techniques. They learn to read tides, understand seasonal patterns, exploit marine resources. Some researchers think coastal populations might have been particularly innovative. Shellfish are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which support brain development. Coastal diets might have provided the nutritional foundation for brain growth, and coastal migration routes allow rapid spread. You can follow the coast without crossing deserts or mountains. Early humans leaving Africa might have followed the coast around the Arabian Peninsula, then India, then Southeast Asia, reaching Australia in just a few thousand years. Rivers in Africa create highways and barriers. The Nile, the Congo, the Zambezi, the Niger. They provide water, food, and transport. You can follow rivers inland. Fish provide protein. Floodplains create fertile soil for plant foods, but rivers also divide populations when they flood or change course. This geographic complexity creates a patchwork of connected but distinct groups. the perfect conditions for evolutionary experimentation, enough isolation for new traits to emerge, enough connection for successful innovations to spread. You don't want complete isolation, or you get inbreeding and genetic drift leading nowhere useful. You don't want complete mixing, or you get homogeneity with no differentiation. Africa provides the middle ground. The soil in parts of Africa is poor. Tropical soils lose nutrients quickly. Heavy rains leach minerals. Organic matter decomposes rapidly in the heat. This sounds like a disadvantage, but it creates pressure. You can't rely on easy agriculture in many regions. Later, when agriculture develops, tropical African farming requires different techniques than temperate zone farming. You need to be mobile, flexible, opportunistic. This lifestyle maintains selection for intelligence and cooperation even after agriculture. Agricultural societies in more fertile regions, Mesopotamia, China, become sedentary, hierarchical, specialized. African populations in marginal areas remain more egalitarian, more mobile, maintaining ancient human flexibility. Modern humans in Africa develop symbolic thinking, cave paintings, beads, ochre use. Evidence of abstract thought appears in African sites before anywhere else. The Blombos cave in South Africa contains engraved ochre and shell beads dating back 75,000 years or more. Ochre is iron oxide, basically red mud. Why engrave it? Why make patterns? It serves no practical function. It's art. It's symbolism. It's humans thinking abstractly, creating meaning beyond immediate survival. This symbolic revolution might be what truly makes us modern, not just smart, but capable of imagination, art, ritual, culture. Neanderthals eventually developed similar behaviors, but later, possibly after contact with modern humans. The innovation starts in Africa. The question isn't why did humans evolve in Africa? The question is why couldn't they evolve anywhere else? And the answer is becoming clear. Africa provided a unique combination of challenges and opportunities. Enough stress to drive change, enough stability to prevent extinction, enough diversity to reward flexibility, enough time for incremental improvements to accumulate. Take away any one factor and the result might be different. More specialized primates adapted to one environment, or extinct primates unable to handle change, but not humans, not adaptable, intelligent, cultural, language-using, fire-making humans. Other continents had primates, they had climate change, they had predators and prey, but they lacked the specific recipe Africa offered. The exact timing of forest retreat, the precise pattern of climate oscillation, the particular arrangement of geological and ecological factors. Change one ingredient and the result changes. The anthropologist's nightmare, why here and not there, has an answer. It's not racism. It's not some populations being superior. It's geology, climate, ecology, and millions of years of very specific circumstances. Africa won the evolutionary lottery, and everyone alive today benefits. You can see the traces of Africa in human bodies today. Darker skin at the equator protecting against UV radiation, lighter skin at higher latitudes maximizing vitamin D production, but the baseline, the original human skin tone is African, dark brown. Everything else is a recent modification. The last 40,000 years or so. Pale skin evolves rapidly once humans reach northern latitudes. It's strongly selected because vitamin D deficiency causes rickets, bone deformities, death in childhood. But it's a surface change. Under the skin, everyone is African. The same with hair texture, nose shape, body proportions. The variations are superficial adaptations to local climates over the last few tens of thousands of years. Curly hair protects the scalp from intense sun. Straight hair might be advantageous in cold climates, or it might be neutral drift. broad noses humidify air in hot, humid climates. Narrow noses warm air in cold climates. Tall, thin bodies dissipate heat. Short, stocky bodies conserve heat. These are minor tweaks to the African baseline. The foundation is African. The modifications are cosmetic. Language diversity shows the pattern too. African languages contain the greatest variety of sounds, the most complex click consonants, the widest range of tonal systems. The Khoisan languages of southern Africa use clicks not found anywhere else. These might be ancient, possibly retained from early human speech. Languages outside Africa use subsets of this diversity. European languages have 20 to 40 distinct sounds. Some African languages have over 100 when you include clicks and tones. This suggests that as humans spread, they lost diversity, carrying only a subset of African linguistic complexity. The San people of southern Africa speak languages that might preserve some of the oldest continuously spoken language families on Earth. Their genetic diversity is also the highest. They're the closest living populations to the root of the human family tree. Studies of mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosomes trace back to southern African populations. The oldest lineages, the deepest branches, belong to the San and related groups. Everyone else branches off later. This doesn't make the San more primitive. They've evolved just as long as everyone else, but genetically, they're closest to the ancestral population. The archaeological record keeps revealing more. Every few years, new fossils push back dates or fill in gaps. Homo naledi in South Africa might be older than expected. New dating techniques revise timelines, but the pattern remains consistent. The deepest roots are African. The earliest technologies appear there first. The older one, tools, 3.3 million years. The Acheulean hand axes, 1.7 million years. The Middle Stone Age blades and points, 300,000 years. The earliest art, the earliest evidence of long-distance trade. Everything starts in Africa, then spreads outward. Not because Africans are superior, but because Africa had a head start. Millions of years of head start. You can't compete with that. Climate models help explain why other regions couldn't compete. During ice ages, huge portions of Eurasia become uninhabitable. Ice sheets kilometers thick cover Scandinavia, Britain, Northern Europe, parts of Siberia. Temperatures drop globally, sea levels fall, coastlines shift. Populations contract into refugia, small pockets of survivable climate. Southern Europe, the Middle East. These bottlenecks reduce genetic diversity. Populations crash. Many lineages disappear. When conditions improve, populations expand again, but they've lost diversity. This happens repeatedly. Each ice age winnows European and Asian populations. Africa, straddling the equator, never becomes entirely inhospitable. Even during the driest periods, some regions remain livable. The Ethiopian highlands, the Congo basin, coastal areas, rivers fed by distant mountains. Populations shrink but don't vanish. This continuity matters for maintaining evolutionary momentum. Evolution needs time and populations. Small, isolated groups can't innovate effectively. They inbreed, drift genetically, lose diversity. Large connected populations generate variation and spread innovations. The predator guild in Africa is unmatched. Lions, leopards, hyenas, wild dogs, cheetahs, crocodiles. This density of large predators creates constant danger. Humans evolve not as alpha predators, but as clever survivors. We don't have claws or fangs. We have brains and cooperation. This underdog origin story shapes everything about us. We succeed through intelligence, not strength. Through planning, not power. Through working together, not individual dominance. The African predator community forces these adaptations. In regions with fewer predators, prey animals become complacent. In Africa, everything stays sharp, alert, cautious. This includes humans. Disease also plays a role that can't be overstated. Africa is hard on humans. Malaria, sleeping sickness, various parasites, yellow fever, dengue, Ebola, HIV, dozens of others. These diseases kill, but they also select. Populations that survive carry genetic advantages. The Duffy antigen negative blood type provides resistance to certain malaria species. It's common in African populations, rare elsewhere. These advantages might come with costs. Sickle cell anemia, for example. 2 copies of the sickle cell gene cause devastating disease, but 1 copy protects against malaria. In malarial regions, the trade-off is worth it. Enough children survive malaria that the occasional sickle cell case is acceptable loss from evolution's cold calculus. This constant selection pressure keeps evolution active in ways more benign environments don't. In regions without malaria, there's no pressure for sickle cell. In regions without sleeping sickness, no selection for resistance. Africa has all of these diseases simultaneously, multiple selection pressures operating at once. This creates complexity. Populations must balance multiple threats. The genetic diversity this produces is enormous, and genetic diversity is raw material for evolution. The more variation, the more options evolution has to work with. Water availability drives much of human behavior. Following seasonal rains, knowing where permanent springs exist, digging wells in dry riverbeds. African environments teach water management. This knowledge becomes crucial when humans later spread into deserts elsewhere. The techniques learned in Africa, reading landscapes for water signs, digging in specific locations, following animal trails to water, transfer to the Sahara, the Arabian deserts, the Australian outback, eventually even to the Atacama and Sonoran deserts of the Americas. Humans survive in these harsh places using skills developed in Africa. The megafauna extinction that occurs when humans reach other continents doesn't happen in Africa. The animals here evolve alongside humans. They know to run. African elephants flee human voices. They've learned over hundreds of thousands of years. When humans reach North America, mammoths have no such knowledge. They're curious, not fearful, easy targets. Within 1,000 years of human arrival, most are extinct. Same in Australia, South America, Madagascar, New Zealand. Everywhere humans arrive as strangers, megafauna disappears. But in Africa, the ecosystem remains intact. This creates a different relationship. Humans in Africa hunt, but they don't exterminate. The ecosystem adapts. This stability allows human cultures to develop over long timescales without crashing their resource base. Social structures in early human groups probably resembled modern hunter-gatherer societies. Small bands of 20 to 50 individuals, extended family networks, fluid membership. People move between groups, egalitarian decision-making, no formal hierarchy, leadership based on competence and consensus. These structures develop in Africa over hundreds of thousands of years. They're well adapted to African environments. When humans spread globally, they carry these social patterns with them. The foundation of all human societies is African. Later developments, agriculture, cities, states, kingdoms, all build on this foundation, but the base remains. Music and dance likely originate in Africa too. The human capacity for rhythm, for synchronizing movement with sound, appears universal. Every culture has music. Every culture has dance. But the diversity and complexity of African musical traditions suggest deep roots. Drums, polyrhythms, call and response, complex interlocking patterns. These aren't just entertainment, they're social bonding. Shared rhythm creates group cohesion. Moving together synchronizes people. Music might be ancient as language, maybe older. Rhythm doesn't require words. These traditions serve functions: communication, ritual, teaching, bonding. They're part of what makes us human, and their deepest expressions are in Africa. Cooking techniques evolve in Africa: roasting over open flames, boiling using hot stones dropped into containers, earth ovens where food is buried with hot coals, smoking meat for preservation, fermenting foods to make them digestible. These methods increase food safety and nutrition. They allow exploitation of otherwise inedible foods. Bitter roots become palatable when properly processed. Toxic plants become safe when cooked or fermented. This expansion of the diet reduces competition and supports larger populations. Different groups can exploit different resources. This reduces conflict and allows higher population density. The use of poison on weapons develops in Africa. The San people and others use plant and insect toxins to bring down large game. Arrow poison from beetle larvae. Plant poisons from desert succulents. This technology requires incredible knowledge, understanding which plants are toxic, which parts contain the poison, how to extract and concentrate it, how to apply it to arrows or darts, how to track wounded animals until the poison takes effect. This isn't simple. It's chemistry, biology, and patience. The wounded animal might travel for hours before succumbing. You need tracking skills to follow. You need understanding of the poison's timeline. This complex technology develops in African hunter-gatherer societies and demonstrates sophisticated knowledge systems. Tracking skills reach extraordinary levels in African hunter-gatherers. Reading footprints to determine species, age, sex, health, how long ago they passed. Following tracks for days across hard ground, through rivers, over rocks. Reconstructing behavior from subtle signs. A scuff mark means the animal turned. Crushed grass indicates resting. This cognitive ability, maintaining a mental map, predicting animal behavior, interpreting subtle signs, requires significant brain power. It's another selection pressure shaping human intelligence. The best trackers feed their families better. Their children survive at higher rates. Over generations, tracking ability improves. It becomes culturally transmitted, but probably also has genetic components. Spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, memory, all under selection. The human capacity for endurance running is an African adaptation. You can outrun almost any animal over long distances in the heat, not through speed, but through persistence. Humans are mediocre sprinters. A dog, a horse, an antelope, all faster, but over marathon distances in hot weather, humans win. You sweat efficiently. Other animals pant. Panting competes with running. You can't pant and sprint simultaneously, but sweating allows continuous cooling while running. You carry water. Animals can't. You track prey until it collapses from heat exhaustion. This persistence hunting is still practiced by some African groups. The San hunt kudu this way, chase for hours. The animal overheats, eventually stops, can't continue, then you kill it. This hunting strategy only works well in hot environments like Africa. It's uniquely human. No other predator does this. It requires bipedalism for efficient distance running. It requires sweating for cooling. It requires intelligence for tracking and persistence. It requires planning. You need water. You need patience. It might take all day, but it works. And it shapes human bodies. Long legs, spring-like arches in feet, specific muscle fiber types. The ability to maintain effort for hours. Marathon runners today use this ancient adaptation. Their African ancestors developed it chasing antelope across the savannah. Birth spacing in humans is unusual. Compared to other apes, human babies are born more frequently. Chimps have babies every 5 to 6 years, humans every 2 to 3 years. This is possible because of cooperative child rearing. Grandmothers, aunts, older siblings help raise children. This allows mothers to have the next child before the previous one is fully independent. Weaning happens earlier than in other apes. Solid food supplements breast milk. Other group members help feed children. This cooperative breeding is uniquely human among apes. It allows faster population growth. This demographic advantage, evolving in African social groups, helps explain human population success. We can reproduce faster than our closest relatives. Human hairlessness is an African adaptation. You lose most of your body hair to improve cooling through sweating. Hair traps sweat, slows evaporation. Naked skin allows efficient cooling. This works in hot climates, but becomes a disadvantage in cold ones. Humans outside Africa develop clothing, shelters, better fire management to compensate, but the original adaptation is for African heat. You're a tropical ape who learned to survive elsewhere, not a temperate species that adapted to heat. The baseline is African. Everything else adjusts from there. The human gut is shorter than other apes. You can't digest raw, fibrous plant material as efficiently as gorillas. Gorillas eat leaves, stems, bark. Their guts ferment this tough material. It takes time and a large digestive system. Humans eat higher quality foods: meat, cooked tubers, processed grains. These digest quickly. You don't need a huge gut. This change happens because your diet shifts toward higher quality foods. Your digestive system specializes, becomes more efficient for this diet, and this dietary shift begins in Africa. Meat from scavenging, tubers from digging, both processed with tools and eventually fire. The human gut shrinks. The energy saved goes to the brain. Big guts or big brains. You can't afford both. Humans choose brains. Tool traditions in Africa show continuous development over millions of years. From simple older one choppers to refined Acheulean hand axes to sophisticated later Stone Age blades and points. This isn't static, it's constant innovation. Each generation learns from the previous and occasionally improves. The Acheulean hand axe persists for over 1 million years. That seems stagnant, but within that tradition, refinement occurs. Later axes are more symmetrical, better balanced, more efficiently made. This cumulative culture, building on the past, is fundamentally human, and it starts in Africa. No other continent shows this continuous technological development over millions of years. Because humans evolve in Africa. They're only visitors elsewhere. The concept of home base develops in Africa. Unlike other primates that nest wherever night finds them, humans return to specific locations. These bases serve multiple functions: food sharing, tool making, social interaction, teaching. Children learn by watching adults. Home bases allow extended childhood. Children don't need to forage constantly. They can play, practice skills, learn. This central place foraging strategy requires planning and cooperation. Everyone knows where home is. You range out during the day, return at night. This pattern is universal in human societies, and it begins in Africa. Exchange networks develop in Africa. Long-distance trade in valuable materials. Obsidian for tools transported hundreds of kilometers from volcanic sources. Ochre for pigment carried long distances from specific deposits. Shells from the coast found at inland sites. These networks indicate social connections beyond the immediate group, trust between strangers, reciprocity. You give me obsidian today, I give you ochre next time we meet. Economic thinking. The foundations of human trade emerge in Africa. These networks also spread innovation. A new tool design appears at one site. Within generations, it appears hundreds of kilometers away. Ideas travel along trade routes. This accelerates cultural evolution. The elderly play crucial roles in African hunter-gatherer societies. They carry knowledge, memories of rare events. The drought 30 years ago, where water was found, which foods sustained people, locations of resources used decades earlier, skills and stories, techniques and traditions. This means keeping older people alive past their reproductive years has value. They're not just extra mouths to feed, they're libraries, knowledge repositories. The human lifespan, with its extended post-reproductive phase, is selected for in African social groups that value knowledge. Grandmothers help raise children, grandfathers teach skills, old people remember. This intergenerational knowledge transfer allows cumulative culture. Each generation doesn't start from zero. They inherit wisdom. Humans are born helpless. Compared to other animals, human babies are useless. They can't walk, feed themselves, or escape danger. A newborn horse walks within hours. A newborn human takes a year or more. This extended childhood is costly. Babies need constant care. They're vulnerable. But this helplessness allows for learning. That huge brain needs time to develop and fill with information. Humans are born early by ape standards. If pregnancy continued until babies were as developed as chimp infants at birth, gestation would last 18 to 21 months. But human birth canals can't accommodate larger infant heads, so babies are born early and development continues outside the womb. This is only possible in social groups that protect and teach their young. Patient, nurturing groups. These groups evolve in Africa. Laughter appears to be ancient. Other primates show laughter-like behavior. Chimps make breathy sounds when tickled, but human laughter is unique. It's social bonding, stress relief, communication. The capacity for humor, for finding things funny, might seem trivial, but it's important for maintaining social groups under stress. And African environments are stressful. Droughts, predators, disease, conflict. Laughter diffuses tension, it signals play, it bonds groups. Shared laughter creates solidarity. This seemingly minor trait has real social value. Groups that laugh together stay together. Humans cry emotional tears. No other animal does this. Crocodiles make tears for eye lubrication, but no other species cries when sad or hurt or moved. The function isn't entirely clear, but it signals distress to group members. It elicits empathy and help. In social species, communication of emotional states matters. A crying child gets attention. Crying signals need without words. Before language develops, crying communicates. Even after language, it persists because it works. It's honest, hard to fake. This uniquely human trait evolves in African social groups where cooperation matters. The human tendency to see patterns, to assign meaning, to create narratives. These cognitive traits emerge in Africa. They help interpret a complex world. If the grass rustles, is it wind or a leopard? Better to assume leopard and be wrong than assume wind and die. So humans overinterpret, see agency where none exists, assign intention to random events. This creates superstition, but it also creates science. Looking for patterns is how you learn, how you understand cause and effect. The trait cuts both ways. It gives you mythology and mathematics, religion and rationality. But it shapes human culture profoundly, and it develops in African environments where pattern recognition means survival. Modern humans leaving Africa don't leave because they're better. They leave because conditions allow it. Climate corridors open. Sea levels drop during ice ages, exposing land bridges. The Sahara greens creating passage north. Populations grow. Resources become available elsewhere. The expansion is opportunistic, not purposeful. Small groups drift northward following game. They don't know they're leaving Africa. They're just moving to the next valley where resources look better. Then the next. And eventually they're in the Levant, then Anatolia, then India, then Southeast Asia. each generation moving a little farther. Within a few thousand years, they've spread across continents, but it starts with small movements, no grand plan, just people looking for food. The success of African humans spreading globally proves the effectiveness of African evolution. Those traits forged in Africa work everywhere. Intelligence, cooperation, adaptability, these aren't specialized for one environment. They're general purpose, survival tools. This flexibility, this lack of specialization, allows humans to colonize every terrestrial biome on Earth, from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests, from deserts to mountains. Humans adapt culturally, make clothing, build shelters, develop new hunting techniques. This adaptability is the gift of African evolution. You weren't shaped for one perfect environment. You were shaped to handle anything because Africa threw everything at you. You can still see Africa in modern humans, not just genetically but behaviorally. The human tendency to gather in groups, to share food, to tell stories, to mark status through decoration, to create art, to seek novelty. These are African traits carried forward. They work in Manhattan or Tokyo or Sydney because they're fundamentally flexible behaviors that adapt to local conditions. The office is a band, the staff meeting is a gathering around the fire. The company hierarchy mirrors tribal status. Modern life dresses up ancient patterns, but underneath, you're still African. The dominance of African genetics globally isn't about superiority, it's about primacy. African humans had millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Populations outside Africa are just branches, recent offshoots that haven't had time to diverge significantly. Give them another million years of complete isolation, and they might become distinct species. But that isolation never happens. Trade routes connect populations. Modern transportation erases distance. Communication spans the globe instantly. Genetic mixing continues. Populations don't diverge, they converge. Humans remain one species. Recent African origin ensures that. Climate change today threatens everyone, but disproportionately affects Africa. The continent that birthed humanity faces desertification, floods, unpredictable weather. The Sahara expands. Lakes dry up, traditional rainfall patterns shift, food security threatens millions. The supreme irony is that the place where human climate resilience evolved now tests that resilience again. The climate that shaped humanity is changing faster than evolution can respond. This time, humans must adapt culturally, not biologically. Technology, migration, innovation. But if history teaches anything, it's that African peoples are extraordinarily adaptable. They've survived worse. Multiple ice ages, the Toba eruption, droughts that crashed populations to thousands. They persisted. That resilience remains. The genetic diversity within Africa exceeds the diversity in all other continents combined. This means more variation, more potential, more raw material for future evolution. If humanity faces new challenges, pandemic, climate change, food scarcity, the solutions might come from African genetic diversity, the same way innovations emerged there in the past. That diversity is precious. It's the full spectrum of human variation. Everywhere else is a subset. Protecting African populations protects human diversity. Losing African genetic variation would narrow humanity's options. We'd all be poorer for it. Understanding that everyone is fundamentally African should change perspectives. There's no genetic basis for racism. The superficial variations between populations are recent, minor, and adaptive. Skin color adapts to UV levels, body shape to climate. Facial features drift randomly or adapt to local pressures, but under the skin, in the bones, in the brain, in the fundamental blueprint of being human, we're all carrying African genes, recent African genes, genes shaped by millions of years of African evolution. The human family tree is shallow and its roots are firmly planted in African soil. We're not separate races. We're one species with minor local variations, all African, all recent, all related. The question of why humans evolved only in Africa has an answer, because only Africa had the right conditions at the right time for the right duration. The climate oscillations that drove innovation, the geographic diversity that rewarded flexibility, the disease burden that sharpened immune systems, the predators that forced intelligence, the time, millions of uninterrupted years for incremental changes to accumulate. Other places had some of these factors, but not all, not in the right combination. Not for long enough. Africa had the complete package, and that package produced you. Modern, thinking, creative, adaptable you. So now, as we stand here in the present, looking back across millions of years, we see the path clearly, from the Great Rift Valley to the rest of the world, from tree-dwelling apes to spacefaring humans. The journey is extraordinary. The origin is singular, Africa. Not because of destiny or divine plan, but because of geology, climate, ecology, and probability. The right place at the right time, and everything that makes you human. Your big brain, your language, your creativity, your endurance, your cooperation, all of it forged in African environments over millions of years. Let that settle in. Let the weight of deep time, of countless generations, of unimaginable struggle and triumph wash over you. You are the result of the greatest evolutionary success story ever told. And it could only have begun in one place. The place where forests met grasslands, where climate swung between wet and dry, where predators forced cleverness, where cooperation meant survival, where brains grew large and language emerged, where fire was mastered and tools refined, where humanity was born. Africa, now take a breath. You're here. You've made it through the whole story, from the cracking earth of the Rift Valley to wherever you're sitting right now. The journey is complete. The answer clear. Humans evolved only in Africa because only Africa could create humans. The combination of factors, the timing, the duration, the intensity, all aligned in one place. Not through design, through chance and circumstance, but the result is undeniable. Every person alive today traces their ancestry back to Africa. Recent African ancestry. We are all Africans, some of us just left more recently than others. And that legacy lives in every cell of your body, in your DNA, in your brain structure, in the way you sweat and laugh and cry, in your capacity for language and tool use, in your tendency to cooperate and create and imagine. All of it, every bit of what makes you human, comes from Africa. You carry millions of years of African evolution inside you. No matter your skin color, no matter where your parents were born, under all the superficial variations, you are African. We all are. Because humanity is African. Was, is, always will be. The origin never changes. Only the distance from it, and that distance is small, measured in thousands of years, not millions. You're practically still there, still carrying those ancient African adaptations, still responding to ancient African pressures, still human in the way Africa made you human. So tonight, as you close your eyes and drift towards sleep, remember where you came from, not your hometown or your country, but deeper, further back, to the savannas and the Rift Valley, to the place where your ancestors stood upright for the first time, where they made the first tools, spoke the first words, made the first art, where they became human. That place is part of you. It always will be. You evolved there, you belonged there. Even if you've never been, even if you never go, you carry it inside you. Africa, the only place humans could have evolved, the only place we did, the beginning of everything. Good night.